All right, starting off with the metaphysical issues here, the primary focus of the idealists is on a realm that is superior to nature or beyond nature, that the lower physical nature, our material world, takes its direction from, is perhaps brought into existence from, is controlled by a higher and superior realm, an ideal realm, or in religious versions, the realm of the spirits or of the gods and goddesses, right, so to speak. By contrast, the focus metaphysically for the realists is upon nature. Now, immediately we have to then start introducing some distinctions here. While it is true to say that idealism traditionally has been a much more religion-friendly approach to philosophy, and the realists are much more science-friendly in their approach to philosophy, that falls out of what you take to be your primary understanding of what the nature of reality is. But it is true that not all idealists are religious, and it's also true that not all realists are purely naturalistic in their thinking. In both cases, you will have some that are religious and some that are more secular in their philosophy. But what is typically true, though, is that the kind of religion that one gets coming out of the idealist tradition and the kind of religion that one gets coming out of the realist tradition are quite distinct. To see those differences, first I want to say a couple of things about the epistemological contrast between the two, maybe a little bit also about some of the human nature themes, and then we will bring in this issue of religious realists versus non-religious realists, and the same thing for the idealists again. Okay, suppose we're an idealist and we're now raising the epistemological issue, the epistemological issue being a knowledge-focused issue. How do we come to know that which is important and true and real? If we are concerned primarily with coming to know the realm of beyond us, what typically happens in the more religiously approaches to idealism is an emphasis on some sort of mysticism as the ultimate source of the best knowledge, the highest knowledge, the truest knowledge. Mysticism being some sort of direct communion between the mind of a human being and the mind of God, or direct revelation from God to a given individual. And then for those other human beings who do not have, either they don't have the mystical capacity or they have not been chosen by the gods to have mystical or revelatory experiences, those individuals epistemologically should operate on a principle of faith. And we've discussed the faith issues in some detail earlier in this course. For a contrast, though, if we are not a religious idealist, as Plato, while his philosophy is in many respects religion-friendly, or Kant, we spoke of him to some extent in the modern world, religion-friendly in some respects, but not purely a religious thinker. For those individuals, mysticism and faith issues are not front and center. Instead, they will emphasize reason, right, as our important means to coming to know the world, but they will argue that it has to be a reason that is purified, right, in a certain sense. That we're not interested in coming to know the natural world primarily, and so what we don't want to emphasize is those modes of coming to know that only put us in contact with the natural world. And here, of course, the senses are the primary targets. The senses being part of our physical being. They only put us in contact with the physical world. And so from the idealist perspective, they are useless to giving us or even putting us on the track toward knowledge of the higher world, which is non-physical. And so what we need is a reason that has been purified. So reason has its own internal resources, its own capacities to come to know the higher world. What we find when we turn to realism is a disparagement and a rejection of both of these epistemological approaches. If our primary object of knowledge and our primary focus of concern is the natural world, then for the realists, the senses and sense perception is a very important foundational source of knowledge for us. The senses are are part of our physical apparatus, but they involve physical interactions with the world. Various sorts of energy impinge upon our physical body, and our senses are tuned to various kinds of sensory array. And so the senses, from the realist perspective, do put us in contact with the natural world and provide a legitimate source of knowledge. On the basis, though, of our sensory information, we don't simply stop there, as many animal species do. We go on to use our reason. We will take our sensory information and we will abstract, we will classify, we will then go on to determine various abstract cause and effect principles. We might run experiments and various analytical methods. And then in sophisticated form, all of the tools of scientific method, and all of the tools of scientific method will involve ultimately a very sophisticated interplay between sensory input and rational analysis and so forth. And the idea then for the realist rather is that epistemologically, knowledge is that which arises via the use of our senses and reason in an integrated fashion here. So we will then say we are much more empirical in our orientation as realists, and technically those advocates of pure reason or more purified reason in the philosophical tradition are often called rationalists. So the rationalists will disparage to sensory knowledge, the empiricists will make sensory knowledge front and central here.